Last Thursday, YouTube suspended The Hill, the political news site owned by NewsNation parent company Nexstar Media, for 7 days for alleged election misinformation. YouTube claims that The Hill and its morning show Rising violated its policies regarding spreading lies about the 2020 presidential election by, get this, posting videos of former President Trump making false claims about the election being rigged. Now, because everything is so extremist in this country today, it may be hard to believe that you can both believe, as I do, that the former president ought to stop making these ridiculous claims about the election, and also believe it's wrong to deplatform The Hill for covering them or playing his remarks. The first of The Hill's alleged infractions came when the outlet posted raw footage of Trump's address at last month's Conservative Political Action Conference to its YouTube page. During his remarks, the former president made his typical false claims about the 2020 election. But the bigger issue appears to be a recent segment of Rising, which included this clip of former President Trump speaking with Fox News' Laura Ingraham about why Putin invaded Ukraine.
He sees the weakness and the incompetence and the stupidity of this administration. And as an American, I'm angry about it and I'm saddened by it. And it all happened because of a rigged election.
Following that clip, Rising's hosts criticized Trump in general, but they never explicitly corrected Trump's lie about the election being rigged. And for YouTube, therein lies the problem. In December 2020, YouTube announced that it would begin taking down videos that made claims of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 presidential election. But after the January 6th Capitol riots, the company announced that it would penalize any channels posting videos with false claims in violation of their policies. That apparently also includes news organizations that don't properly correct those claims while reporting on them, which is exactly what happened here. Apparently, because The Hill failed to unequivocally correct Trump's comments about the 2020 election, YouTube suspended their channel for a week, beginning last Thursday. That seems crazy to me. YouTube is punishing a news outlet, and a respected one at that, for simply playing a clip of Trump talking about the election and not properly correcting him. Trump's use of the phrase rigged election has become like a verbal tick for him, like referring to the failing New York Times or crooked Hillary Clinton. Does YouTube really expect every outlet that reports on the former president to come back from every clip with an explanation that his claims about the 2020 election are untrue and the election was won by Joseph Biden, fair and square? It's one thing for YouTube to penalize people who are out there making false claims themselves, and even there I have reservations. But to prevent media outlets from even playing video of the former president of the United States? Now YouTube is determining what commentary is necessary to pass their guidelines? That seems like a dangerous business for them to be in. Let's bring in one of the co-hosts of Rising, Ryan Grim, who is also the D.C. bureau chief for The Intercept. Thanks very much for coming on the program. Appreciate it. All right, so what exactly did YouTube say when it suspended The Hill for a week?
Basically exactly what you said. You know, there weren't any conversations that I was directly involved in. I think some of the higher ups met with some of their higher ups, and they stuck by their decision. They said, you know, these are the rules that we have. You have to specifically call out that specific claim within that video. You know, we have a 2-hour morning show, and multiple times throughout that morning show, we referred to the legitimate President Joseph Biden. And anybody who's followed my work or followed the work of The Hill knows that we understand that President Trump is lying about having the election stolen from. We've said that, you know, multiple times. I've been entirely clear about that. In that very clip, I called him a quote, actual madman, because I went back and watched the clip. I called him an actual madman. And later I talked about how he's a complete and total fraud and probably ought to be convicted in court. So YouTube's claim is somehow that because he mentioned the phrase rigged election, there would be a viewer who would come away from that thinking, well, they say he's a madman and they say he's a fraud, but he did say rigged election. So, gee, I guess maybe the election was rigged.
I mean, and I assume that you share my view that this is an insane road for YouTube to go down, putting aside whatever one thinks of President Trump. This sort of, you know, there's always this debate about what is censorship and what isn't censorship. You know, this does feel like censorship.
Right. It feels like they're in the editors' meeting. Like we want from them, okay, give us some talking points, YouTube executives. What are we allowed to say? What are we not allowed to say? Because interestingly, we had a segment the other day about Andrew Cuomo, who is now going around saying that cancel culture basically overturned a legitimate election in New York. And so we wondered on the air, like, wait a minute, what does YouTube say about whether or not Andrew Cuomo is allowed to say that in a clip that we play? And so kind of we tried to parse it. Okay, he was elected legitimately. He was then driven out of office by the public, who was, you know, furious about his behavior. You could, I guess, call that cancel culture. So I suppose he's entitled to say that. But what does YouTube think? Because the only thing that matters is what YouTube thinks. So does YouTube believe that he is able to say that? And if not, well, what are YouTube's talking points that we need to put as a disclaimer after his words? And it's just a completely inappropriate place for a giant corporation to be in.
So what do you do on Thursday when you're back, right? Are you now going to have to think all the time about, well, let's see, was about what we're going to say going to pass YouTube's test for appropriate commentary?
Well, we had a dry run of it the other day where we were talking about the warming of relations between the U.S. and Venezuela. And I said, you know, Republicans still have hard feelings. There are some Republicans who say that Hugo Chavez actually was involved with swinging the election in 2020 over to Trump. And then I paused and said, however, I would like to note for our viewers that Hugo Chavez was dead in 2020, according to experts, and so therefore was unlikely to have been involved in swinging the election. So I guess, you know, for YouTube, that's the kind of thing you have to do. I'm almost more disturbed in some ways about how they came down on the Hill, which is, you know, separately for them posting the clip of Trump at CPAC. You know, long before I was at the Hill co-hosting Rising, I really appreciated the Hill's clips that they would post from press conferences and from speeches. They often post, say, Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer speaking to reporters. That's extremely helpful journalistically. And it's the same thing that C-SPAN does, and it will be in the future helpful to historians. But if they're not able to do that anymore, then historians and journalists are going to be deprived of that raw material. What if 10 years from now nobody can find Trump's CPAC speech? Yeah.
We just showed a 3-shot, by the way, of you guys on the show where you both looked miserable. So I apologize for that. I'm sure it was not a typical moment on the show. Ryan Grim, thank you for coming on. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Thank you for watching. Click the red subscribe button below so you can get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.